Morning, brother. How are you? Good, my brother. Excuse me.
This morning is going to be the last lesson that I'm doing on this. I've got a bit less time than I thought, so I'm going to try and wrap up a few thoughts. But before I do, just to get back to last week's lesson, it might have been a misunderstanding of some sort. Last week we looked at the word Torah, at the meaning of the word, and basically the origin or the root of the word, in other words that are associated. And the thought came through that Torah means instruction, and it has this idea of something being sent from the higher to the lower. Right? And we have associated words like rain, it's associated with the word Torah, from the higher to the lower. We have the word teach, right? Teach, from the higher to the lower. And if we compare this to the New Testament, we see the New Testament law, it is receiving from the higher to the lower. It's instruction from the higher to the lower. I'm not suggesting in any way, I did make this point, I just want to make it extra clear, that the New Testament law is just an instruction or good advice. Right? It is law, it is God's law. Right? But the point that I wanted to bring out with it, from the word Torah, is the fact that it is from God, the higher to the lower. Right? It is for a specific purpose. Right? It's not just random laws. And ultimately it is for our benefit. Right? If we are given instructions on how to get somewhere, on how to build something, if we don't follow those instructions, we won't get there, or we won't have that thing which we desire to build. Right? So even if we do say it is instructions, if we follow any other way than the way that Jesus Christ has shown, we will not end up where he ended up. So is it a suggestion? Do we have to follow the New Testament law? No, you don't have to, but if you want to get to where Jesus is, you do. Right? Because that's the way, that's the instructions, that's the outcome. Nobody has to. I mean, most of the world don't. Because they're not following the way, they're not following the instructions. And the instructions are there for our benefit. We sometimes think that we follow the law, obey the law to please God. Right, for his sake. Right, it's almost like a burden. But like rain that falls from the sky and benefits the ground, the rain itself doesn't get any benefit from feeding the ground. It's the ground that benefits from it. Right, and so it is with the law. Be it Old Testament, be it New Testament, the law is what benefits us. Right. So the law, or the word Torah, literally means instruction. Right? So it's guidance from a higher source in life that will benefit the receiver. Right. And we see, if you look in the Old Testament, this word Torah is used in more than one sense. Right? We obviously know that it is speaking of the law, as in the law of Moses. Right? In Exodus 16 verse 28 it says, "And the Lord said to Moses, how long will you refuse to keep my law and commandments?" Right, it's speaking about the actual legislation of the law under the Old Covenant. Right, we also see it in regards to coming from God to humans, but not necessarily specifically the law of Moses. Isaiah 30 verse 9 says, "For they are rebellious people, lying children, children unwilling to hear the instruction of the Lord." That word instruction there is actually Torah or law. And we even see this word used in regards as coming from human beings. Right? An example would be Proverbs 1 verse 8, where it says, "Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching." Teaching there is actually Torah. Do not forsake your mother's law. Right? Why would a mother or a father or a parent give their kids laws? Is it so that they can feel strong and mighty? No, it's for the kids' benefit. Right? They are the ones that actually benefit from obedience to the law. Why? Because it helps them to keep on the straight and narrow, so to speak. Right? So when we look at the word Torah, we also see it derived from that idea of shooting an arrow, right? Keeping straight on path so that you can hit the target. Right, so the word law is used in several ways. Yes?
Apologies, just something that's maybe useful for illustrative purposes. But I see the Old Testament law as a rail, and the New Testament law of Christ is another rail. It forms a rail on which we travel to our desired destination, our heavenly home. So, we actually use they're running parallel along the first picture. And God's design, like you said again, is like a magnet that's the earth. And so we make use of this constructed God designed way to reach our ultimate destination.
Okay, yeah, that's basically saying that like a railway line has got two rails. Right? We need both parts, or we lean upon both parts, the Old and the New Testament, to reach our destination. If you only have one, obviously the train's not going to move. Right. Okay. So the law is not random. Right. It's not just for the sake of making rules. Right. The law was given, both then and now, for our benefit. To keep us on the path. There is only one way that leads to God. Right? So God has given us instructions as how to stay on that way. If we do not listen to the instructions, it's our choice. But then we cannot expect to reach the destination. Right? That's why Jesus says, "I am the way." Right? We follow the same path, the same instruction that Jesus followed. Right. So it's not random, it's not arbitrary, it's got a purpose, and its intent is to benefit us. Right. So, what is the Old Testament law? What part of the Old Testament is the law? Right. Once again, it is used in with different focuses. Right. So we see, for instance, the Old Testament law refers to that which was given at Mount Sinai, right? Of which we have the first 10 commandments written in stone, and then all the others that God spoke to Moses, and then Moses spoke to the people. Right, Malachi 4 verse 4 says, "Remember the law of Moses my servant, even the statutes and ordinances which I commanded him in Horeb in a Jewish perspective, all the books of Moses were considered as law. We also see the whole Old Testament being referred to as law, specifically when we look from a New Testament perspective. Right. The law in the Old Testament, you have three divisions. Right? The law, the prophets, and the writings. In the New Testament, it quotes from all three of these sections, right? And says that it's quoting from the law. Right? So if we were to say that we only have to obey the 10 Commandments, we'd be mistaken. Right? Let's say we pretend we were still under the law. Because quite often that is the attempt of people to say that it's the 10 Commandments that we have to obey. Maybe except the fourth one. Right? But there is no such biblical distinction. Maybe we'll say, well, it's just moral laws we have to obey. There is no such biblical distinction. Maybe it's just law at Mount Sinai. Right? There is no such biblical distinction. Maybe it is just the Pentateuch. There is no such biblical distinction. The law is everything given by God to guide the people under the Old Testament from Adam until Jesus Christ. Right. Which brings me to the next point, is that man has always and will always be under the law, or the law of God, or the Torah of God, the instruction of God. Right? Has man ever been without instruction from God? What about the Garden of Eden? Right, so even though the word law isn't actually used in reference to Adam and Eve or in the Garden of Eden, God said, don't eat from that tree. Was that not a law? Was that not something to benefit them? Right? God gave them law already in the Garden of Eden. Right, he said, don't eat that. Yes?
What are the years between Eden and Moses?
You'll get there. Alright. Was this law, if we consider the law to Adam and Eve, can we call it a law? If we look at the consequences, right? What's the consequences of disobeying the law? Bad, right? Jail or dead or whatever it might be. What's the consequences of disobeying a suggestion? Well, who knows? Right? What are the consequences when they disobeyed the command of God? Separation from God. Right.
God does not make suggestions.
No, God doesn't make suggestions, right? He just tells us what it is. Right? Neither does it not. My mother doesn't. Okay. So there is always been law, even under Adam and Eve there was law. What about between Adam and Eve? What about Romans chapter 1, verse 18 to 23? Right? We have an expression of, I don't know if you can call it the law of nature, or the intrinsic law, or whatever you might want to call it, right? Let's say the law of nature, right, is one which contains natural revelation of God's eternal power and divine nature. And this law, this information is sufficient to judge us. Right. Romans 1 verse 18 to 23, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. Man has always known, or always had, instruction from God. We are also told about, also in Romans chapter 2, right? For when the Gentiles who do not have the law do by nature the things required by the law, these do not have the law are law to themselves. How do they do by nature the things that are required of the law? It's the conscience that God has given everyone. It's what separates us from the rest of the animals. One of the things. Man has never been without guidance from God. Right. Here's a question that was asked that I'm going to ask now. Why do you think God only gave his law, or the Torah, Pentateuch, whatever you want to call it, the law of Moses, to the Jews? Why don't he give it to all mankind? Doesn't it seem unfair that he only gave it to the Jews? Any thoughts? Why? Is it unfair? Yes. They weren't ready. Okay, weren't chosen, yes. I don't think the Jews were ready either. If we look at the history of Judaism. Yes? Village?
Abraham was a Jew, and the promises were given to him.
Well, technically, Abraham wasn't a Jew because he was before Jacob. Through Jacob, you have Israel. Well, Jacob is called Israel, and from Israel, you have the Jews, and then the law comes. So technically, he wasn't even a Jew. Right? But the promise was made. It's a good point. That promise was made. Right? The eternal promise, the promise that is fulfilled in Jesus Christ, as we saw in one of the previous lessons, God's ultimate original plan, right? Salvation to all mankind through Jesus Christ. So why did he give it to one small group of people? How would he have given it to everybody? How would he have given the law to everybody? People sitting down here in the bottom of Africa, people sitting up there in Russia. Was he going to gather them all to Mount Sinai and speak to everybody, the whole planet Earth? Besides the practical point of it, obviously God can, right? But would there have been a whole lot of Mount Sinai's all over the world? Right? Would it have made a difference? That's my question. Did the law actually benefit the Jews? No, it just revealed their sinfulness and their inability to do what God asks. Right? So it wouldn't have actually even made a difference. Right? And we must also remember that the giving of the law is part of a greater narrative, it's part of a greater story that we see fulfilled, lived out in the Jewish people. They were slaves. They were set free from God and provided for by God. They were given their own law, which they disobeyed. And they were given a promised land, and between the law and the promised land, all those who were disobedient basically fell and died. That is part of a greater story. But ultimately, it wouldn't have mattered if everybody had it. I, in a sense, think that they are worse off for having had it. That's why Jesus said to them, if you were blind, you would have been better off. But you claim that you can see, but yet you still disobey my commandments. Right. The law of Moses, similar to what Dr. Ben was saying with the 2 rails, the law of Moses isn't in opposition, right, to promised already to Abraham. Abraham wasn't a Jew. Abraham was before the Jews. This promise was made to him. This was always God's final plan, as can be seen by the fact that it was promised before the law of Moses. Right. What about the patriarchs? Were they under law? What about Abraham? Was he under law? Yes, he was under the law that everyone else is, the natural law, but he also had other laws, right? There was specific revelation and instruction given to the patriarchs like Abraham, right? We don't necessarily know what they all are, but if you read, for instance, in Genesis 26, verse 5, it says, Abraham obeyed me and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. Abraham kept the laws of God. Abraham was before the law of Moses. Man has never been without law. Then obviously, we get the actual law given at Mount Sinai, right? Was it 10 commandments? No. A common count is 613 commandments, right, of which the first 10 were written on stone. 365 of them were negative commandments. In other words, don't do this. 48 of them positive commandments. In other words, this is what you must do. Why was it given? Because for our benefit, there's a purpose. Right? If there was more time, what I wanted to do is to go into some specific laws and look at the actual purpose and benefit of it. Maybe perhaps another time. Right. So we had the law given to Moses. Right. The law of Moses wasn't a new or different or extra law than the other ones. It was simply specific verbal examples on God's instruction. What is God's ultimate instruction to mankind? You see it in the Old Testament, it's repeated it again in the New Testament. Right? What was God's ultimate instruction? Basically, love one another. Right? He says, love me and love each other. And then man says, but we don't know how to. So then he comes with the law and he says, if your neighbor's donkey falls into a ditch, help him get it out. Right? That's an expression of love. Right. Why do we need to love one another? Because that is the way, that's the path, that's how we get to God. Right? It's for our benefit, it's for my benefit to love you. Right? Because that is the root or the instructions. Right. In the law of Christ, right? We already looked a bit at this. I want to just read our Old Testament passage, Isaiah 42, verse 1 to 9. In regards to this. It says, behold my servant, it's the prophecy of Jesus, right? Behold my servant whom I uphold, my chosen, in whom my soul delights. I have put my spirit upon him. He will bring forth justice to the nations. He will not cry aloud or lift up his voice, or make it heard in the street. A bruised reed he will not break, and a faintly burning wick he will not quench. He will faithfully bring forth justice. How do you bring forth justice? It's with law. He will not grow faint or be discouraged till he has established justice on the earth, and the coastlands wait for his law. Remember, this is a prophecy of Jesus Christ. Thus says God, the Lord who created the heavens and stretched them out, who spread out the earth and what comes from it, gives breath to the people on it and spirit to those who walk in it. I am the Lord, I have called you in righteousness. Talking of Christ. I will take you by the hand and keep you. I will give you, that's Jesus, as a covenant for the people. Jesus is our covenant. A light for the nations, to open the eyes that are blind, to bring out the prisoners from the dungeon, from the prison those who sit in darkness. I am the Lord, that is my name. My glory I give to no other. with law. Always will be. If we were ever without law, it means God has left us alone without any guidance or instruction. Would that be a good thing? No, it wouldn't. Right? Almost like what happened in the book of Judges, right? When they were in the promised land, and it says everybody just did what they pleased. He's doing what you please, good or bad. Well, if we look for the example of the book of Judges, it was very bad. Right? Because what we please isn't necessarily what's going to get us to our destination, which is with God. Right. Lastly, I just want to look at the spiritual nature of the law. In Romans chapter 7, verse 12 to 14, it says, "So then the law is holy, and the commandment is holy and righteous and good." Speaking of the Old Testament law. "Did that which is good then bring death to me? By no means. It was sin, producing death in me through what is good, in order that sin might be shown to be sin, and through the commandment might become sinful beyond measure. For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am of the flesh, sold under sin." Was the law of Moses, the Old Testament law, spiritual? Was it spiritual? Well, yeah. Paul says it, right? So it must be. God says it through Paul, so it must be. How was the law spiritual? Very often we view the Old Testament law in contrast, right, to the New Testament law, where it's carnal, fleshly, right? Spiritual, good, wonderful. Right? But here Paul is saying that the Old Covenant, the Old Testament, was actually spiritual. Right? So the spirit of the law is often contrasted with the letter of the law, right, which is a reference to the Old Covenant. Right. But the spirit of the law has to do with the deeper meaning or intent or purpose behind the law, where the letter of the law refers to how it is expressed in actual words, right? Regardless of the deeper meaning. I think children and very often adults are good at emphasizing the letter of the law to the exclusion of the spirit of the law. To give an example, so a child comes home from school and is told, "Don't watch TV until you finish your homework. Don't watch any TV until you finish your homework." A few minutes later, the mother or the father comes in and finds him watching cartoons on the tablet with his homework untouched. Right? The child protests that his mom only told him not to watch TV. Right? "I'm not watching TV, Mom, I'm watching the tablet." Right? They were applying the letter of the law, but missing out on the spirit of the law. Right. So in this example, we see the child kept the letter, but not the spirit. Right. If the mother had said, "Finish your homework before you watch cartoons," then the child would have been caught watching soccer. It's not cartoon, Mom. Right? It's the letter of the law as opposed to the spirit of the law. Right. How specific would you have to be? Do not watch any kind of entertainment or any kind of electronic device. So instead he just goes and plays outside on his time. Right? And doesn't tidy up his room or do his homework. What was the spirit of the law? The spirit of the law is, I want you to do your homework, right, before you do anything else. The letter of the law was, don't watch TV. Right. And we find this also one of the challenges with the Old Covenant. Right? It was expressed in words with physical examples, but the Jews then missed the point. Right? As we often do miss the point even in our New Covenant. Right? We think it's about ticking off boxes. Right? Yes, I've done this, but have I actually done this? Right? Leviticus 19 verse 14, for instance, says, "Do not curse the deaf or put a stumbling block in front of the blind." Right? Do not curse the deaf or put a stumbling block in front of the blind. What was the letter of the law? Well, don't curse a deaf person or trip a blind person. Right? Can you go through your whole life without doing that? I think I can, right? I'm sure we all can. But what was the actual spirit of the law? It says, don't take advantage of people's disabilities. Right? Can we go through life without doing that? It's like, no, well, I didn't curse the blind guy, I just cursed the dumb guy. Right? I didn't trip a blind guy. Right? I tripped a crippled guy. Right? Humans are excellent at manipulating laws and commands to get around what they want. Another example, in the Old Testament or the Old Covenant, they were told on the Sabbath, you are not allowed to travel. Right? So what constitutes traveling? If I walk to the bathroom, is that traveling? No, surely it can't be. Right? If I walk to the shop on the corner, is that traveling? Maybe, right? So they will establish, okay, a Sabbath day, how much you're allowed to travel on a Sabbath day is, let's say, 1 kilometer. Right? Any more than that is considered traveling, right, from your home. What constitutes a home? Right? Okay, well, if this is mine, right? So if I walk 1 kilometer and I say, I'll leave this here and now this is my home base. Right? Now I can walk another kilometer and then I can leave my shoe there. I can walk another kilometer and leave my tie there. Right? They were missing the spirit of the law. In the Sermon on the Mount, right? What was the Sermon on the Mount about? Jesus says, the law says this, but I say this. Was he redefining the law? Was he opposing the law? No, he was showing the spirit of the law. Right? The law says, do not commit adultery. Right? But I'm telling you that God's intent is don't even look at a woman with lust. Right? The law says, do not murder. But I'm telling you that the purpose of the spirit of this law is don't even be angry with your brother. Right? Why not? Because this will lead to bad things. That's not how you express love. Right? Jesus Christ wasn't changing the law or anything. He was simply expressing the spiritual nature of the law. Right? God had a purpose for why he gave those laws. I believe if we looked into each and every law, even the seemingly random ones, we'll find a purpose, either for our benefit or at least to reveal the ultimate law that was to come, which is Jesus Christ. Right? There is purpose and benefit from the Old Covenant law. There's the spirit of it, and that spirit would apply as much today as it did then. Perhaps there's actual examples that God gave, because those examples were under a different covenant, would not be the same. Right? But if my neighbor's donkey falls into a ditch, even today, should I not help him out? Why? Because it's the law. Right? No, not because it's the law, because that's how we express love. When Jesus was asked, what is the greatest commandment? He said, love God and love others. And this fulfills the law. That's God's story. But can we understand it? We cannot necessarily understand it. So he gave us the examples under the Old Covenant. This, look, do this. So what then did Jesus die to? And it says that Jesus nailed the law to the cross. What was it that he nailed to the cross? Sin and death, right? Okay. When first scripture I think we read in the study. It says, blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which was contrary to us, he took it out of the way, nailing it to the cross. This is the law. What was nailed to the cross was the law. That was the first point made. When he raised, he didn't bring the law with him. Are we dead to was God's guidance and instruction nailed to the cross? No. So what was? What was that physical expression of it, right, or examples of it, that man was using as a checklist in which to measure his righteousness. How do we measure our righteousness? By obedience to the law? Well, our righteousness is measured by God searching the intentions of our heart. Right? That's what it says, this new covenant, the law is written upon the heart. We don't have a checklist to which to measure righteousness, and if I measure up to this checklist, I'm good with God. Right? Why not? Because that checklist, the physical expression of it, doesn't necessarily enforce, if you want to call it, the spirit or the purpose, right, of this law. We will be judged by the law, but what will be judged is basically the very first two or the two greatest commandments that was there in the Old Testament and is now. Love God and love each other. Is there a way to physically see if we are doing this? Well, there will be physical expressions of it, right? But ultimately what is going to be checked is in our hearts. Do you love God? Do you love each other? So the law of God, what benefit is the Old Covenant to us today? It's every benefit, right? It's an expression of God's will and desire. Even though it was expressed in physical instances, God's will and desire and guidance stands today as much as it did back then. Right? So there's every effort or benefit in it. But what we need to see is the spirit of the law. That doesn't relieve us from responsibility to obey in a new covenant the commandments given. They are still commandments. Right? Why do we obey them? Well, we obey them because they are how we love God and love each other. And if we don't obey them, we're not walking in the way, we're not going to end up where Christ is. So we do have to obey. But above that is the spirit of the law, shown by Jesus Christ. Any comments, questions? No? Aaron?
Just one comment. When you look in Hebrews 10, verse 15 and 16, it says, but the Holy Spirit also witnesses to us, for after he had said before, this is the covenant that I will make with them after those days, says the Lord. I will put my laws into their hearts, and in their minds I will write them. Then he adds, their sins and their lawless deeds I will remember no more. Which also speaks to what you are saying, that God will look into our hearts, because these laws are written in our hearts. So it matters most what is in our heart and our minds, because that represents the law of God.
Okay, go ahead. Any other comments? Right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Hello, my
Bruce, well done, man.
I think I actually have a plate. Yeah, the people, yeah.
Doesn't make it starts with